What if humans weren't the smartest species to ever exist? Not machines, not AI, not aliens from another world, but another kind of human, one that lived right beside our ancestors. Tens of thousands of years ago, they weren't beasts. They weren't savages. They had fire. They had tools. They had structure. And most of all, they had a brain even larger than ours. Can you picture that? A human species with a bigger skull, more developed brain lobes. One that crafted sophisticated tools, that buried their dead with care, that hunted with strategy and passed down memory across generations, that treated the sick and didn't abandon the weak. A true culture once thrived, and then they vanished. Not because of disease, not because of an asteroid, not because of nature, but because they met us. Homo sapiens. There's a theory, more terrifying than any doomsday scenario. Neanderthals weren't wiped out because they were weak, but because they made us afraid. Afraid of intelligence, afraid of difference, afraid that another kind of human, so like us, could be better than us. And in the history of our species, fear of intelligence has never made us step back. It has always made us strike first. Maybe Neanderthals were the smarter ones, but sapiens were the ones who refused to share the throne. And that war wasn't fought over land. It was fought over the right to be called human. Around 60,000 years ago, the world had no nations, no maps, no borders, but there were already those who came first and those who came later. In Europe and Western Asia, Neanderthals were the ones who came first. They had lived there for hundreds of thousands of years, not as wandering ghosts, but as true inhabitants. They had permanent caves, seasonal hunting routes, familiar shelters, and did not roam aimlessly. They didn't need to go far because they knew every stream, every crevice, every herd's migration path. Then one day, from the south, strangers appeared. Homo sapiens, our ancestors, had left Africa, crossed the Middle East, and stepped onto European soil. They saw forests, ice, snow, and then they saw another kind of human. Not beasts. They didn't growl. They didn't flee. They stood upright, looked directly, and felt no fear. Neanderthals with larger skulls. Sapiens with more agile bodies. One stable, the other mobile. One guarding their land, the other expanding. One deeply adapted, the other adapting quickly. Both had survival instincts. Both knew fire, tool-making, group hunting, and burial of the dead. But the difference wasn't in tools. It was in how they understood the world. Neanderthals built their world on stability. They didn't chase novelty. They optimized what worked. They lived in small groups, about 10 to 30 people, bonded by blood and care. When someone broke a leg, they weren't left behind. They stayed, burned herbs, hunted nearby, until the injured recovered. It wasn't just instinct. It was structure, emotion, and understanding. Sapiens were different. They kept moving, always watching with eyes that wanted to change things. They didn't stay long. They weren't tied to places. They were tied to each other. When one place ran out of food, they left. No regret, no nostalgia. They lived in larger groups, with clear roles: hunters, guards, firekeepers, trap setters. And most importantly, they passed knowledge through speech. They had more complex languages, more symbolic systems, clearer signs and meanings. Two social models, two survival philosophies. Neanderthals, still, intelligent, emotionally rich. Sapiens, dynamic, flexible, ever-changing. No one was wrong. No one was inferior. Just different. But in every meeting between two opposing models, if they cannot coexist, one will eventually be seen as a threat. And then, Neanderthals disappeared. Not in one battle, not overnight, but little by little. Each cave taken, each water source divided, each familiar herd seized, until finally, there were none left. No pandemics, no volcanoes, no apocalypse. Only one fact remained. Neanderthals once existed and then vanished when a second intelligent species arrived. The real question isn't who was weaker. The real question is, was intelligence a reason to be erased? Intelligence is what set humans apart from every other species. But that same intelligence also made us capable of destroying one another. When scientists reconstructed the Neanderthal skull, they discovered it was 100 to 200 cubic centimeters larger than that of the average Homo Sapiens. Some argued, a bigger brain doesn't mean higher intelligence. But the key wasn't in the size, it was in the structure and function. Their occipital lobe, the part responsible for vision, was unusually developed. They could see better in the dark, a vital skill during the Ice Age in Europe where sunlight barely lasted a few hours a day. Their sensory nerves were also more advanced, supporting fine motor skills in the hands. Neanderthals didn't just chip stones. They crafted blades, scrapers, drills, chisels, tools for hunting, shelter building, skin processing, and reused them efficiently. At sites like Le Moustier, La Pharisee, and Cabera, more than 60 distinct tool types were uncovered. Not random shards of rock, but purposefully designed instruments. Curved axe heads to strip bark, double-edged blades for slicing meat and tendons, bone chisels for breaking ice without damaging stone tools. And most remarkably, they were made in bulk, which means this wasn't instinctual behavior. They planned ahead. They anticipated needs before they arose. Neanderthals were once thought to be brute force hunters, striking whatever prey crossed their path. But evidence from Lockhart de Saint-Brelade, Jersey, UK, reveals otherwise. They drove dozens of deer off cliffs, not through strength, but strategy. They assigned positions, coordinated movements like a small military unit. Without organization, that wouldn't have worked. Without signals or rudimentary language, there could be no coordination. At Shanidar, Iraq, the skeleton of an elderly Neanderthal was found. Blind in one eye, lame in one leg, broken ribs. Yet he had lived at least 10 more years after his injuries. That tells us one thing. Neanderthals didn't abandon the weak. They treated them. They waited. They cared. We pride ourselves on compassion. But maybe they had it before we did. Some Neanderthal dead were even buried with flowers. Pollen discovered around the bones wasn't a coincidence. It was a ritual farewell. Tooth and bone analyses from various sites reveal patterns. Young men hunted. Elders crafted tools. Women and the ill stayed in caves. Children were protected and brought along. Neanderthals remained in one place for longer periods, forging deep territorial bonds. They passed knowledge not only through action, but via clearly defined social roles. Unlike early sapiens who constantly moved, Neanderthals lived with structure, shared responsibilities, and collective memory. And perhaps that's exactly what sapiens feared. They feared a human who wasn't a beast, but also not quite like them. They feared a system that could survive without their presence. They feared a kind of intelligence that felt too familiar, yet uncontrollable. We don't destroy what's weaker. We destroy what's smart enough to open doors, make plans, and look us in the eye without fear. The more sapiens spread, the more anxious they became. They saw that Neanderthals did not retreat, did not bow, did not abandon their homes. They lived as if they had a right to be there, as true natives. Now imagine you're the newcomer, less adapted to the cold, less skilled at hunting, unfamiliar with the land. And you encounter a group who got here first and maybe smarter than you. What would you do? You don't need to imagine. Just look at human history. When AI starts to think, we rush to lock it away. When machines begin to write, speak, create, we talk about banning development. Not because it's wrong, but because it's too close to human intelligence without being human. Maybe Neanderthals were more intelligent, but sapiens were the only species that responded to intelligence with violence. And for 60,000 years, that has never changed. There's a truth few dare to face. It's not the strong who scare us. It's the intelligent. A beast with fangs, we know how to kill. But a mind that thinks, we don't know what it'll do next. And that's when intelligence becomes a threat. Neanderthals weren't beasts. They weren't the traditional violent enemy. They were like us, but different in ways that made us lose control. They didn't run. They didn't bow. They stood their ground, looked sapiens in the eye, as if analyzing. And that look was the real danger. Because Homo sapiens, wandering unfamiliar lands, understood one thing very quickly. There is no room for two intelligent species on the same land. Threat-based thinking. Intelligence as a reason to strike first. Neanderthals weren't inferior. Their social organization, hunting strategies, burial rituals, and mass tool production all proved it. They were a complete system, a true competitor, not weaker, just not us. And throughout history, when a new system appears, the old has only two choices: integrate or be erased. Sapiens chose the second. Archaeological evidence, signs of an intentional extermination. At Goyet, Belgium, over 100 Neanderthal bone fragments were found broken in the same way. Femurs split to extract marrow. Skulls smashed precisely at the forehead. Some bones bore high heat marks, as if they'd been cooked or burnt. Not burial, not mourning, but destruction, calculated and thorough. At El Sidran, Spain, 12 Neanderthal skeletons were found dismembered. No tools, no signs of ritual, only fragments, treated like animal meat. The killers didn't stop at death. They erased identity. They removed meaning. At Krapina, Croatia, dozens of skulls were fractured in identical patterns. Not random trauma, not panic, but a plan. Today, when we create AI, we immediately seek limits. We build deep fakes and then call for bans. As soon as a new intelligence begins to surpass us, we draft emergency shutdown protocols. We don't wait to be attacked. We strike first simply because it's too smart. In society, the same pattern appears. A child who learns too fast is labeled a misfit. A mind ahead of its time is isolated. A community that lives differently is scrutinized, suppressed. We don't fear wrongness. We fear what doesn't resemble us. Neanderthals, beings who didn't fit into a future defined by sapiens. Sapiens advanced quickly. Neanderthals advanced deeply. Sapiens moved, connected, expanded, conquered. Neanderthals stayed with the forest, the cave, the memory of a place. Eventually, Homo sapiens could no longer tolerate the presence of the other. Not because they were evil, but because they made us feel not central. We often say Neanderthals went extinct because they weren't as capable as sapiens. But there's another theory, far colder. They were wiped out because they had things sapiens did not. Stability, deep observational skills, endurance under extreme conditions, extraordinary environmental memory, and possibly a different kind of intelligence, deeper, quieter, and more terrifying. Sapiens didn't need to outthink them, just eliminate the threat. And they did. No more cohabitation. No more hybrid DNA after 40,000 years ago. No more shared footprints in caves. No more children born from two bloodlines. We didn't live with them. We erased them. The lingering question, can intelligence save you if it makes others uneasy? Human history is filled with Einsteins who were driven away, Galileos who were condemned, Teslas who were forgotten, not because they were wrong, but because they were ahead and alone. Neanderthals may have been the first victims of this syndrome, not failures, but forced disappearances. And the most painful truth is this: Sapiens survived, but we can't be sure we were the better humans. We were simply the ones who knew how to eliminate what made us afraid, even if it deserved to exist. What if Neanderthals truly were more intelligent? If they had larger brains, deeper emotions, and a more sustainable society? Then maybe they didn't die because they failed. Maybe they died because they made others feel small. In an ideal world, intelligence would be respected. But this world was never ideal. It has never been ruled by kindness, but by fear. And that fear existed long before writing, before cities, before morality. It began with the first glances between two human species, in the cold forest under gray skies. One stayed in place, knowing every stream, every cliff. The other had just arrived, moving, observing, and questioning. One was strong in stability. The other was quick to eliminate whatever made them uneasy. Neanderthals may have never started a war, but they didn't bow either. And sometimes, to Homo sapiens, refusing to submit was a death sentence. No law ever declared that only one kind of human could exist. But we wrote that law ourselves in blood. They disappeared. We survived. But not because we were right. Only because we struck first, before we ever understood who they truly were. Today, we are living in the middle of a new storm of fear. AI is now writing, speaking, and thinking faster than we do. Deepfakes blur the line between real and fake. Machines are starting to take over everything we once believed was uniquely human. And again, we react just like we did 60,000 years ago. We form oversight committees. We restrict access. We halt development. And quietly, we prepare emergency shutdown protocols. Not because AI has attacked us, but because we cannot accept an intelligence we don't control. And if one day we meet Neanderthals again, what will you say? Will you apologize? Or will you still believe they had to die so that you could live? If you believe that fear of intelligence is an ancient instinct and still shaping our world today, leave a comment. Do we still have space for a mind that isn't our own? And if you want to know how many brilliant minds we've destroyed just because they made us feel small, hit subscribe and join us in uncovering history from the ashes, from erased memories, and from what once was another kind of human.